Excellent. So welcome everyone. I think there's mainly we're going to be talking gender harmony today. So Ruben, I saw you're on. You're all good.
All good. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you. And news and updates. Probably the only thing I have, I think, from recent past is to remind people there's a Connectathon event coming 20th to the 22nd. That's right. 2, 3.
It is. We'll need to table whether we hold a FHIR working group meeting on the 20th.
Yeah, that's a good question. There'll be an opportunity for a face-to-face. But we'll also probably have to coordinate with the other groups for that day. So maybe the co-chairs can have a chat about that.
Okay. I assumed it would be simultaneous, and depending on the topic involved, people would end up choosing which,
that's good.
Which room they're going to be in.
That sounds fair too. Cool. So that's noting that that's happening. Those dates are confirmed. I'm unaware of any ability to sign up for the event yet. So I think that should be coming shortly. We've got HSN Australia people sorting that out now. So I believe we should have that up shortly to be able to sign up. So that's good. That's about it for that. Cool. So we might move on to the main topic of the day, gender harmony. So Ruben, do you want to take control or tell me where to drive to?
Happy for you to keep driving, Brett. My desktop's a mess because of the working group meeting I've been in for the last few days. In any case, we shouldn't have to go much further than the tour tickets themselves. Right, so what these tracker items are proposals to add gender identity and pronouns based on the gender harmony extensions in the FHIR extensions pack to AU base. I should point out, because this is AU base, there's no discussion around must support or anything of that nature. It's simply profiling these extensions so that anyone can use them in Australia. It provides appropriate terminology for values and guidance and so forth. So I think it's pretty straightforward. We added these about 2 weeks ago and notified the community. I'm not sure if there have been many comments on these tracker items. I know that the corresponding ones in AU Core have attracted some comments. We're not discussing AU Core today. This is all just about getting these things into AU base. And if we're successful with this, then these can then become the foundation upon which we adopt these data elements in AU Core as a separate exercise. Daniel, I wonder if it might be worth you making a very brief comment on your recent discussion with International Council with respect to what we're doing in relation to adoption of these data elements.
Okay, yes. So I was talking to the National IG Council, which is I guess a group formed of all affiliate members can submit a member there that meets monthly. And I was talking to them in January. They were very interested to get a report back on the approach we're taking and what we're doing in terms of harmonizing, particularly around gender harmony at this stage, but also around the other aspects. And they were very interested and very supportive of what we're doing in Australia and thinking that we're essentially leading the way. And they also indicated that they wanted to, I guess, look to this as to how to provide guidance across the other jurisdictions on how to harmonise and adopt gender harmony.
Thanks, Daniel. So yeah, look, I think that's a really good outcome, and thanks, Daniel, for attending that meeting. That was just impossible for me at the time. All right, so before I start a sort of high-level walkthrough of the proposal, I'll just check if anyone on the call has read these proposals and has any questions.
I've read it, but I don't have questions. Did you want us to indicate who's read it? Or who has read it and has questions? Sorry.
Yeah, I guess if anyone wants to reveal that they've read it, that's fine. I'm going to try and go through as much of this as I can. We do have a fair bit of time, and I don't think we have anything else on the agenda today. I'm pretty sure we've got enough time to go through it. All right. Does it
So
go on,
sorry,
Heath?
I've read it probably more from an AU core perspective, but yeah, my main concern is around the terminology for the RSG ones,
All right,
as I've
so
kind of alluded to. So
right. So we're not going to discuss RSG today. Well,
Okay.
not unless there's time at the end of this meeting. The priority for today is gender identity and pronouns.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Heath. So let's start with the gender identity one. So I should start by saying AU Base already has a gender identity extension in it. This is one that was developed, I think, to support US Core a long time ago. The Gender Harmony project has moved on from that one and defined a new one called Individual Gender Identity, which better aligns with their gender harmony model, the logical model. And this is what the newest versions of US Core are moving to as well. So it kind of makes sense for us to rather adopt that one. So going from the top, the first thing we obviously needed to do was consider terminology, which pre-coordinated concepts we'll use as values for gender identity. Now, the extension we previously had was bound to a corresponding NCTS value set called gender identity response value set. We had a look at this when we wrote up this proposal and determined that it actually needs a slight update to add some new concepts. So currently it has identifies as male, identifies as female, non-binary, there's an unknown value, and there's asked but declined. So that's what's currently there. This proposal is seeking to update that value set with an additional concept, which indicates that the workflow in use in whoever's adopted this particular profile and extension did not support obtaining a gender identity value. Now, this was based upon feedback received at the November Connectathon in Melbourne. So we're going to introduce the not asked code from the data absent reason as an additional concept in that value set. So that's the terminology side. In relation to the gender identity extension, we're proposing to add this to AU-Base related person, and AU-Base practitioner profiles with 0 to many cardinality. And we will also apply constraints, specifically binding the value to the aforementioned gender identity response value set in the NCTS. We'll also be looking to add profile-specific implementation guidance to the profile pages, which leverages the existing AU-Base patient guidance. And as I mentioned before, because there's already an existing gender identity extension, we are proposing to deprecate the use of that and have it replaced with the new individual gender identity extension. And then onto search parameters. Again, we have an existing patient gender identity search parameter, which leverages the older extensions. So we'll be seeking to replace that one with a search parameter for the gender harmony individual gender identity extension. And we propose the new search parameter as indicated in the XML in this proposal. I'm going to go to the end, and we can certainly come back and have a more detailed look at these things if we need to. And lastly, we will update the examples for patient, related person, and practitioner to demonstrate the correct use of this new gender harmony, gender identity data element extension. So that's the sum of the proposal. So at this stage, I'll ask again if anyone has any questions or comments. And I see his hands up.
Yeah, he's up.
So in the search parameters, I see person and practitioner role in the base elements there. Is that a typo?
That must be a typo.
And
Danielle?
also in the expression as well.
Possibly. The thing that the search parameter should match is what the core extension allows. So the core FHIR extension says I can be used on the following resources, and the search parameter, when it lists its context, should line up. So it may be a mistake, it may not be. I mean, obviously there is at least one mistake there because I've copied and pasted practitioner twice. But it definitely needs to match whatever the international extension says this can be stored against.
Can we have a look at the international extension to check whether patient role is appropriate?
Yes,
Sorry,
I think
practitioner role.
there, yes, you've got the link on point 2, which says individual gender identity. That should go there looking at it.
Sure, thanks.
No, it does say practitioner role.
Wow. I suppose that then needs to be dereferenced against. Okay, so this is the context for where the extension can be applied.
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't think the definition of the search parameter, which says here are the things, paths I can search against, technically it should match the extension on the things that you can find it against.
Yeah,
basically.
True. So then we're also saying that it's it should be person instead of that second practitioner
Yes.
reference in the search parameter. Okay.
So there's an existing search parameter, but we're replacing it with a new one.
Yeah.
I'll talk to that. So in R4, FHIR, and it's still true in R5 for now. I think they'll fix it in R6. So the FHIR standard does not define search parameters for any extensions, even if they're core FHIR extensions. So when we originally put into AU base, the patient gender identity extension, which was all that was available in R4 at the time, we put in a matching search parameter. Yeah. If we replace the patient gender identity extension, which I guess is the proposal here, part of the proposal, with the new extension of individual gender identity, we should also replace that search parameter so that it searches against what is recommended in AU base for gender identity.
Okay, so this is an HL7AU managed search parameter resource.
Yes.
So
which they have to be for all extensions, even if they're international core extensions. We have to, in Australia, define how the search parameter works.
So can we basically constrain that further down to the ones that we only want to apply this extension to?
We could, though I wouldn't agree with doing that in an AU base perspective. It's a technical definition and it should match the extension. It doesn't mean your system actually does all of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Cool.
Thanks for pointing that out, Keith.
Yeah. Danielle, do you have another point?
Yeah, I did have another point, which is to say that I've had a look at this and I do recommend deprecating what we've got in AU base of the use of the patient gender identity extension and moving to the individual gender identity extension, because that original one is deprecated in R4. So we have to move to this new one in R5 and R6 anyway. it makes a lot more sense to me to move to that, since we can, in R4, and be supporting that continuity across the FHIR versions.
So basically,
Yeah.
move out.
Yes. And I'll make two other points. You
Yep.
mentioned, Ruben, US core. Now that R4 patient gender identity extension was, I agree, designed with the learnings from US core in mind, but they actually use a special US core gender identity extension. It's not actually using the R4 one anyway. And they will, yeah, I agree, as far as I know, be also moving to using the individual gender identity extension, which is, I think, another point for us moving to that as well and staying harmonized with both future versions of FHIR, but also our international specifications.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually had a word with Brett Marquin from who works on one of the leads for US Core, and he made it clear to me that the intent is to work on adopting all of those data elements in due course. And they're actually doing a lot of work on 6 parameter for clinical use at the moment, which I found interesting. Agree with those points. Liam.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. You just mentioned that the cardinality was 0 to many. I was just wondering what circumstances they'd been greater than 1 and whether that was intentional.
Yeah, it is intentional. So I guess the key argument for that is that gender identity is a fluid concept. It can change, and accordingly, there is a period that can be associated with this data element. It is a complex extension, and thus for implementers that would like to keep track of that as things change, that we are not restricting them to only having one of these extensions in their patient resource types. No obligation to use many. We just don't want to restrict it unnecessarily. Thanks. That's a good question.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands. Are there any other comments or questions? All right, not seeing or hearing anything. In that case, I'm going to move that we accept this proposal.
I'm happy to second. With
could
that technical correction on the search parameter to person.
Yep. Thank you, Heath.
Okay. Do we want to? Does that include the deprecation of the patient?
It's part of the proposal. Yep.
Yes.
I think we probably need to make it as 2 motions.
Me too.
Yeah. I think
all right.
It's because it's not actually documented here, is it? So
it is documented.
Oh, is it?
There's an important note. Hang on, scroll up. There's a little all caps that says important note for AU base proposal is to deprecate use of blah and replace it with that. So it's part of this proposal.
Okay. All right, then I'm happy to second it as it is to include that.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any further discussion?
Just one quick question about the extensions cardinality of 0 ... star. Does it mean that you can put in multiple instances of the value? Okay.
Well, multiple instances of the element, yeah, which is also
Yeah.
matches what US Core has done. They allow 0 to many.
So you can have many at the same time, regardless of the period. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think we probably wouldn't mess with that anyway in AU base.
Not in AU base.
We thought about that. Yeah. Cool. So we've had the motion as per this ticket moved and seconded. Can I call, please, for anyone abstaining? See none.
And you abstain by using the reactions and
Yeah, you can
raising
use
your
reaction.
hand.
Yeah, reaction would be good. That way I can see it. So I have no abstentions. Anyone against?
Philip
Oh.
has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Philip, can I confirm that was against?
Abstain.
Abstain?
No, Phil's voting for.
Thumbs
Just in
up.
the
Oh,
chat.
I haven't got that far. Yeah, that's good. So here, no one against, no one abstaining. So I assume everyone is for it. Beyond that, so we'll just mark that as unanimous. Good.
Great.
Happy with
Thanks,
that?
everyone.
That's good. That's good for that one. Yeah, I think that's a good win. I think most people, and even people that are already implementing some form of this, I think that's quite workable. So it's a good result. And
Right.
on to pronouns.
Thanks, Brett. Again, I'll just check if anyone's read this proposal and has any questions for us. We'll go through it again like the last one. Okay, no questions. So I'll start the walkthrough. Again, a fairly straightforward concept. Pronouns are the, I suppose, titles and references that you can make to someone when addressing them. So he, him, his, her, etc. Again, the Gender Harmony project addressed this and came up with a model as well as an example binding and a FHIR extension, which is again in the FHIR extensions pack, published at the same time as R5. What we want to do here, once again, is standardize the use of that extension in Australia by adding it as an optional element in AU base. So like the last proposal, we'll start with terminology. Now, in this case, I don't think we had a value set in AU base or in the NCTS for pronouns. And so this proposal is proposing that we add an AU base value set, which includes the values from the, I think it was an example value set in the Gender Harmony project that just allows us to have some level of control over this. And it adds values in addition to what's in that example set of unknown, asked, and declined from the data absent reason code system. So what they have are 3 values from Loink. Him, he, him, his. I'm not sure why his is repeated there. Himself, similarly for she, her, and they, them, etc. So we'll be seeking to adopt those in our value set and also including the additional ones of asked, declined. And if we can just go back to the proposal, Brett, because I now forget what else we've put in there. Unknown and then asked and declined. So that's what the proposed value set would look like in the XML. If you just want to scroll down a bit, Brett, the URL will be, hang on, I'm not sure why. Oh, yes, it is terminology.hl7.org.au, value set au-pronouns. And if we just go further down to the actual description and values, so those blank values are in there, as well as asked, declined, and asked, unknown, and not asked.
Yeah.
So similar to gender harmony, to gender identity. And we then proposing that this be extensively bound to the value for the pronouns. With respect to the extension, it's called individual pronouns in the FHIR extensions pack. So we'll once again be proposing that we add this to AU-based patient, practitioner, and related person. And okay, Brett's having a look at the extension for us. So again, like gender identity, this has a period because pronouns can change over time. And that's again the reason that we are proposing multiplicity of 0 to many as the cardinality for this extension in those profiles. Yeah, and note you can also have a comment.
Ruben,
question?
Ruben, yes. I don't think that us or not us are not pronouns, so this causes confusion. So why are we sort of including them as values? So ask and decline or not asked should be in the other extensions, and the pronoun value should be either unknown for those that are not asked or asked and not provided. So pronoun, but semantically doesn't include the concept of ask and decline, that kind of concepts.
Well, these are exceptional values. I agree they are not pronouns, but we need some means of recording if a value was requested and the individual declined to respond. Same for gender identity.
I'd argue in our 6 elements, we've always had like unknown and other, and they're not 6 elements.
Yeah, exactly.
I find asked unknown and unknown is a bit difficult to distinguish, and we didn't have it in this last set. So, and it is also inconsistent with the text above, where we've said that there's only unknown and asked declined being added to the
yeah, that is a
one,
typo.
For me, yeah, I would say that the 3 that we just agreed on in the last one would be all that's necessary here, and remove asked unknown.
Can we have a look at that code system, Brett? I know that asked unknown is a descendant of unknown. These are all same for asked declined. So the source was asked but does not know the value. So I guess in this case, if they don't know, they could just decline. Is that what you're arguing here?
Well, I would just say it's unknown. Like if they respond with unknown, that it's unknown. I find it hard to think that someone would be asked and then say, I don't know what my pronouns are.
I
so
would.
there is a semantic difference between unknown and asked unknown. Unknown is
I
when...
get it.
Can you talk to Ruben to why asked unknown has been proffered in the pronoun set and not in gender identity or any of the others?
I was just wondering that myself, and
I wonder if that's a typo, to be honest.
It might have been a typo. It might well have been a typo.
I just think it's adding a degree of
I agree.
complexity.
I'm happy to remove it.
Having the 3 already complicates things, let alone having another one to distinguish between, which is so subtly similar.
I agree. That was probably added in error, so quite happy to accept the amendment to this proposal and removing asked unknown.
Well, and Danielle Bancroft, DB? Yeah.
Well, I was just going to agree with Heath. I think the reality is also you have to think about the user experience, and the more complexity you add, the greater degree that it's going to be recorded incorrectly.
Yeah.
Completely agree. All right. So we'll note that.
We'll note that as please 3-minute that. Just we'll note that as amendment.
Yeah, we'll note it's also
unknown. Yeah.
If this is accepted, it will be persuasive with mod. All right, I'll move to section 2, which is the introduction of the individual pronouns extension into AU base. So again, the proposal is to add it to the AU base patient, related person, and practitioner profiles with 0 to many cardinality. We'll apply the terminology constraints, which is to extensively bind it to that aforementioned and discussed value set. We'll add profile-specific implementation guidance to the profile page, leveraging the existing AU-based patient guidance. And it should be noted that AU-based patient has an individual pronouns extension now, and the change is to ensure that the reference extension is the core gender harmony FHIR extension and not a local redefinition. So we can now remove a local workaround with direct referencing of the extension. Danielle T, did you want to speak to that local extension or workaround?
Yeah, so we'd already approved in a previous meeting to include the pronouns extension. At the time, there wasn't an R4 extensions pack available with individual pronouns, and we were working with international on how do we include it. And so we put in a workaround, which is to say we essentially copied the R5 one into AU base and said, oh, this is what it looks like in R4. So this does nothing more than simply say, well, we don't need the workaround anymore. It is what is in the R4 extensions pack that is available and can just be used.
And Stephen? What, you're on mute, Stephen, if you're talking?
Sorry, I just want to state one point. I think it should those kind of as unknown, as declined type of value shouldn't be in the value set. They are semantically incorrect. We should have a data absence reasons that sort of include those, which would be a cleaner design than just contaminate the value set with values that are semantically inappropriate.
So I find that hard to understand, Stephen, because HL7 International, which include then the Gender Harmony Project, which was co-sponsored by patient admin and patient care, included values like unknown already. And I'm not sure how you would represent this data absent reason if you didn't have it as a value for this particular element. Where would you put it?
Well, you would put it there. It just wouldn't be in the value set of pronouns. That's what our agreement is across US core, AU core, IPS, and so forth, is where you don't, at least for unknown, where the data is missing, if the element is of type coding or codable concept, you put that value that in that element.
Yeah. So, Stephen, do you want to sort of outline the alternative you're suggesting for using?
Well,
Past
my
decline?
alternative is to have a null value and then have a data absence reason. But as I said, I haven't paid too much attention to PA sort of artifacts. So it just struck me that when we discuss it today, I think that semantically we are causing confusion going down that path. It'll be a lot cleaner to allow null values and also provide data absence reasons for that. But I'm not going to stand in the way of sort of making everyone agree to change, but just I just want to raise that there are cleaner solutions than going down this path.
Right. So I want to spend a minute on this because a null value, where does that go? Is that the value of the codable concept?
Yep.
And what code system does that come from?
Shouldn't that be in the same?
Yeah.
So
It's a null,
sorry.
It's a null. Yeah, it'd be a null.
Yeah, the value set would have a null value in there.
Right. And then where does the data absent reason go?
Well, you have another data elements to provide the data absence reason.
In another extension?
It's an
Probably.
extension on the extension.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, which we don't do. But yeah.
Right. So this is a pattern that I'm not familiar with. Brett or Danielle, can you comment on whether we've done that for any other elements in AU
I
base?
can, and we can, I mean, we could bring up, I think US core has the same sort of explanation on that as well as AU core, but US cores I think got some shinier presentation at the moment on missing data. And so if you go to guidance, drop down on guidance, I think, and it's probably in general guidance. And on the right, you'll see something about maybe missing data. Yeah, click on the missing data bit. So, oops.
Sorry.
There's your thing there. So it talks about it differs for whether it's a coded element or if it's non-coded. So if your element doesn't support a code, that's when you use the extension. If your element does support a code, you put that coded value in the element itself.
yeah,
basically.
and unknown is a legitimate value because you simply don't know.
Yeah, so
And
yeah, look, I get that.
I think that's the distinction here. One is about missing data, which is I think what you're alluding to. Stephen. And the other one is something that is actually being captured through the user interface and actually stored in
Yeah.
the database. So that's
Exactly.
not missing data. So if we're actually going to have a list of pronouns in the user interface that says those three plus the other three options of unknown, asked, declined, not asked, 6 elements in the user interface, then these all go into the value of the current extension, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's consistent with the value of unknown that's in the example binding in these data
And
elements in gender harmony.
I want to, again, agree with Heath on this one, because we aren't talking about a null value set. Someone is actually feeling the value of the question's been asked, the answer, potentially, the question been asked and the answer is unknown. There are different reasons for having unknown other than just missing data value. So if the unknown is populated, it's a value. I don't see it being a null value.
Yeah,
And we're including
agree with that.
asked. Yeah.
sorry, Brett, say again.
Not asked is also.
Yeah,
means
that's
no
right.
one's ever entered any value.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's still a value.
Yeah.
It is still a value, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not a value of the pronouns.
It's an exceptional value for the pronouns data element.
Yeah, I think this, like, obviously, this is how US Core approached it as well, which I think is relevant to us in terms of.
I guess they've
Yeah.
approached it this way in some parts, but I'm pretty sure that they've got value sets with unknown in it bound to certain data elements.
So this is, we're making a technical agreement basically on how do we understand how to do this.
Yeah.
I would agree with Ruben. There are other instances where unknown is part of the value set. But again, like to Brett's point, if it's kind of already done, if that's how we're all agreeing to it at a technical, then let's move on. I think we're all violently agreeing with each other.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's probably, if, you know, because obviously this is applied broadly across usage in terms of how it's done in US Core. So I think it would be a little.
I think what's confusing
does
here
imply
is that we're
something.
using the same code system for the two purposes. That's the bit that I think is probably confusing the matter, because we're actually pulling unknown from the data absent reason. I note that on gender identity value set, they use unknown from a different code system.
Yeah.
Which one is that?
Null flavor.
Nice.
And I like the fact that we've been consistent and using unknown from the data absent. But I think that's where maybe Stephen's point is a reasonable question to ask, is because we're using the same code system for the two purposes. Anyway, that from a lack of having another code system or not adding another code system, I'm happy with the way it is.
Tim's got his hand up.
Hey, yeah, I do. Thanks. Just quickly, is there not a supplementary code that could be used in these cases? Because I get what everyone's saying, and it's very, treating null values or non-applicable values. I would be surprised if there's not something that would cover a supplementary code like a not applicable or the null value. Code sets generally have the ability to do that because from a reporting perspective, unknown being captured reports as you're saying, as like someone on the other end has asked someone and they've responded back saying unknown, I click that value unknown, versus that the person asking the question just missed it or did not have it available in the conversation. So it's a past, it's not even a option that's been asked, so it's a null value per se from a technical perspective, or it's just not being captured. So I would have thought there would have been some sort of supplementary code that would capture things like this, or options around the link standard that for the values that haven't been asked, like a null value?
Actually, can I just add on that one? I think in that case, asked unknown is actually more appropriate than unknown.
Yes, absolutely. Unknown essentially means your system doesn't know anything. It has no idea anything's even been asked or not. It is literally missing data. It's your null. That's what unknown means. The others, you know something. And what we're raising now is for every single kind of question we ask, will we get people to process a special code that is meaningful just to that question? Or are we making a general agreement to say, if I want to say, I've been asked this, but the person who was asked has declined to answer, or doesn't feel comfortable answering, will we keep that same code across gender identity, pronouns, all of those things, or will we make it a special code every time? I know where I'd like to live, which is just we have one code that we all know that's what that means across the different questions, but I'll put that to the group. Where do you want to live? We're making the technical agreements now.
I think in the context of things like pronouns and gender identity that by definition must come from the individual themselves, the asked, declined, and asked unknown, not asked, is appropriate in that context.
I feel like unknown, the way you just described unknown, Danielle, I had thought unknown's a little bit like a synonym for optional, you know, like it's, and I feel like it comes down to a bit is whether this is mandatory or optional. Like if you must select from the value set, then it forces you to say asked unknown, like I had to ask. Unknown's a bit of a cop out to sort of go, I just set it unknown because I don't even want to ask, you know, like it, as opposed to an optional field and no one actually touched it and therefore it's unknown. Like to me, that's sort of null, but.
It does come back to the question of whether or not you're making it a mandatory value, but at the same time, I guess, broadening that, not to make it complicated, there are legitimate reasons where you can't ask and it's unknown, like someone is entered into the ED and they're unconscious, you can't stop and ask them their pronouns, right?
Exactly.
So the reality is what we're trying to answer here isn't so much the semantics on the unknown versus the unknown or the unknown versus null. I think you've just put it, I guess it's,
but isn't that
are we
not
saying
asked?
that there is no value? Well, it's not asked, it's you can't, right? So again, unless you want the additional context, kind of what I'm getting to is what we're kind of saying, and I think you've nailed it, is are we accepting that you cannot have a null value? If you can't have a null value, are we using unknown as that bucket of catch-all? That's kind of what we're saying, right? That's what it comes down to.
I think so whether it goes in this value set or not, that's where the technical agreements for exchange will be. They'll say, if you don't have this data and you're sending it, like it's missing data, basically, that's what will end up being used across US core, AU core, IPS, everything else will end up using unknown. But that's only when the system doesn't have the information. And I agree that not asked is, the system knows something. It knows that someone didn't ask.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's but like obviously we've cut down because I mean it's much more sophisticated the data absolute reason set to cover some of these cases. But I think like if we're going to have a more manageable set, we have to kind of put some things in a bucket, right? And
we're on the tilting point of what null flavors were in CDA, weren't we? Which I don't think anyone liked in the end. And they kind of went down the pathway of going, we're going to define all the null flavors, and we now live in a world of are we going to do that again? Or
but these are not null flavors. These are things that could go on a questionnaire, right? And where a questionnaire could actually say this is a mandatory in the future, maybe This is a mandatory element. So what do you put in that case? Unknown is a valid value, which is different to a null flavor. And I will also argue that it is different to a data absent reason.
How is unknown different to not asked?
Because you're actually making the explicit statement that I did not ask.
Yep.
And that's different from I don't know? Like,
yeah. How is that
Well, you
different
sort
from the data absent reason? So,
Well, it's only if you want to distinguish. You only want to distinguish whether it was ever asked, right? And like if there's a form if there's a form and nobody answers the question, you asked, right? And that's
to me, not
Unknown
asked
is more of a
better than
historical thing, I guess.
Yeah,
Whereas-
well, not asked. It's still not even historically, we never asked.
Yeah, but if they're unconscious,
don't know
you
that.
didn't ask.
Yeah.
All right,
We
which
didn't
is
record
different
it,
to
so-
unknown.
We can't say if we don't know, then it's not. I don't know. I feel like you're splitting hairs between unknown and not asked.
I agree it's subtle, but there is that unconscious kind of
subtle.
scenario where you
But
didn't ask
not
because
asked.
they were unconscious.
Well, you didn't ask them.
versus-
They're unconscious. You couldn't ask.
why Heath doesn't the data absent reason cover that? By just having a data absent reason.
Because I'm
So-
again, my
Does?
user interface is actually presenting you the options on what to record.
Yeah. But
So
you're
data is not
presupposing
absent.
this is going to be a drop down list. Can't we,
Absolutely.
like in a user interface, surely we can have, like the first question is, do you know? Do you have a value? And then once you answer that, you select a value.
Yeah. So if I'm filling this
Yeah.
out and I'm maybe a related party or a clinician or whatever doing this on behalf of the patient, that there is that
I can-
communications
Yeah.
going on.
I can come up with a use case for unknown which distinguishes it from not asked. If you have an admission form where you've clearly asked what the consumer's pronouns are, and they've written something illegible on there. So they've been asked, but it's still unknown what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've put in low encodes in here. Now
Asked declined. Is that asked declined?
Wow.
No, that was not
unusual.
asked declined.
Ask and unknown. Yeah, they've put a question mark next to it. You don't know.
still there. Yeah.
Yeah.
DB, did you?
Asked,
Ask.
unknown
got-
is a valid response from the consumer saying they don't know what their pronouns are. Now,
Yeah,
if they've
so
written something illegible there, then they know what it is. We just can't fathom what it is.
But
could
that's asked
could also
unknown.
be well, it's also could be a value of the fact that you've asked the question in their foreign language, that I understand the question. There's a whole, we can run down a rabbit hole.
We can.
Just to close off on Peter's point, sure, you could add an additional question first of, have you asked the question, and then ask for a value. But the reality is, in a user experience and the time that you've got in that moment, I think we need to stay away from trying to have multiple question value sets for it. I think the reality is that's probably overcooking it a little bit in terms of what an actual clinician will answer. There is I guess it comes back to the one question we're really trying to answer, which Dan has pointed out a few times, sorry, DT, which is at the end of the day, I think we've all agreed that asked unknown has a value in this. Great, let's park that one. That one was already kind of, everyone sort of agreed to. What we're actually talking about here is, does the value unknown as a catch-all to include null have technical value that we want, or do we say that it doesn't? I think that's really the question we're trying to answer at this point, isn't it?
It is.
If the field's mandatory to, you must answer it, then unknown has a value.
Yeah.
But if the field is optional, then unknown makes
So
no
that
sense.
comes
here,
back
we're
to-
in AU base, so we're
Yeah.
allowing people to then make that choice later on, and we've set up the
Correct.
infrastructure for how you do it if you want to use it. That's why I think it needs to be in there.
Correct. I would agree with that.
Can I just ask
So
really
then
quickly,
you're not
Danielle?
making it sorry, I was just gonna say, you're not mandating it then, you're providing it as a value option and then allowing those in the instance of their implementation to decide whether or not it's a value that they want to support. Sorry, yes,
Yep.
Paul.
Yep. So the question is, so I'm just thinking about the data absent reason. Sorry to get hung up on this because I'm looking at
That's
it,
all right.
particularly around the estimated discharge or estimated delivery dates at the moment as well in the OBS gynae. So
Sure.
I sort of see the parallels here. But if we're like I'm a little bit worried that we designed the data model here to fit the user interface as well. So what I'm getting at is that we could actually cover off, like in your user interface, you could cover off on those data absent reasons in one list, if that's how you want to present it to the user. But then when you're actually storing it, we could be separating out those two concepts because they do feel like separate concepts rather than trying to shoehorn the data absent reasons into
So
the core
storage
value sets.
storage is
different
not really
again.
the concern of an interoperability spec.
Yeah.
This is focused on exchanging.
Yeah.
If I send you this, will you know?
Will you know and do something with it? I think is the
Yeah,
question.
how to interpret
So
it.
to the point, the reason why I parked your comment wasn't because I was saying it doesn't have value. It's independent to the workflow that you do with whoever's on the other end. So if you were exchanging with me and you wanted that data discretely stored, fine, that's a conversation. But I don't think that's mandatory for this piece. This is about what do we need to support for the interface at a minimum for the interoperability piece. And I don't necessarily think the questions in all cases make sense.
Yeah, so if we agree on the value set does include unknown, we know how to interpret that, then
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Correct. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, okay. But there's still nothing to
All
stop
right.
us using the data absent reason as well.
Correct. If you need it in
you
your
can do what
instance,
you that's right. You can do with it what you like.
Yeah.
This is just defining how to represent things when you're exchanging this kind of information.
Yep, makes sense.
All right, so it sounds like where we're landing is we want to keep unknown and ask unknown. Is that what I'm hearing?
I would say yes.
Yeah.
He did provide the link codes in the chat too.
Yes, I saw that.
I like the idea that we're actually pulling from a single code system rather than, and obviously the link is very orientated to questionnaire kind of forms. That last link is really, I don't fully understand how Link works on this. There's a lot of redundancy from my experience, but it does, this list in particular does seem to reuse the concepts of yes, no, which are used in many different answer lists for many questionnaires, and similar with unknown. This list also includes something called refuse to answer and ask but unknown, which is different to the term that I used up above, which was just refused. So I guess what I'm saying is there is a bit of a pattern here in Loic. If we are thinking about this as a questionnaire kind of thing, this is probably a pretty good set of additional items to include in there. Refuse to answer, ask but unknown, unknown. What's not in this list is the not asked, but I think I provided one of those already up above. So yeah, that's my comment. And it kind of just keeps it, for this particular question, keeps it in one code system.
Are there any Loic experts on the call that can speak to these Loic values, which I must say, it's the first time I'm seeing them.
The one time you need the hospital vendor and he doesn't show up. I'll let him know he's let the team down.
Yeah.
The problem with using Loic is that it is almost, it's not a standard pattern for example, the previous topic that we were using, and now we've got two patterns. So that
to
would
be
be
fair though, your biggest problem is always going to be the PAS anyway. So I suspect this is potentially what they're using anyway. So it's actually not a bad recommendation. I kind of agree that it's probably a good one given that it matches kind of what we're talking about.
I can assure you in Queensland Health, Loic is not used for anything like this at all. It's
Not
only
in
used for
yours?
pathology
Okay.
now.
Interesting.
so
I do.
What about
it's an
SNOMED
interesting
codes then?
So
Yeah.
so here's what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say let's agree on the values. That I think we should be to be consistent with all the other ways we've ever done this in AU base, which is using data absent reason. We should stick to the same one. If the proposal is really to start using Loic in our FHIR exchange specifications for the things that we've been using the data absent reason to do so, I think that's a separate one. It's not just about pronouns. I think that
Yeah.
needs to come in as a proposal. We need to consider that, and then we would proliferate that across the set.
I think that's a good approach, Danielle.
So what are you suggesting? We go with the 3 current values and
I
The
do,
full
because
current
it's
values.
technically consistent with the terminology choices with all the other aspects. We've been doing this in AU base. Like there's been this use of the data absent reason for multiple years now to answer these things. And I think what's come out of pronouns for some reason has triggered the suggestion that maybe instead of using the FHIR codes for data absent reason for these things, we should use the LOINC codes for these things. And it's not just about pronouns, it goes across all the other places that we've been using these codes.
I think
That's
that
what
makes
I think.
sense.
Yeah, and I think
I
only-
vote for consistency.
Yeah, we're only using LOINC now because that happens to be the pronoun codes that we have, right?
Yeah.
So it's
And
yeah.
to be honest, I don't think it'll stay that way. We're going to get more
Yeah.
pronouns likely that will come through, and they may be LOINC and they might not be. I don't think we can just we can have a high degree of faith that it will be stable to just be LOINC in pronouns.
All
So
right.
if we move to
Long-term.
LOINC, we're going to use SNOMED plus LOINC sometimes, LOINC plus other things sometimes.
Which we do. Gavin,
Thanks. So I had a question which I think might have just been answered, but I was a bit confused why Heath would propose use of the LOINC codes for declined, for example, rather than just the data absent. Is it just trying to get all the codes we're using in this value set sourced from LOINC, or was there more to it than that?
no, it's pretty much to say we're drawing from LOINC for these other codes. We should draw from the other ones, and also that we are the confusion where we started was Stephen basically saying we should be doing this as a null flavor effectively. When there is no answer, what do we put in there? And that it's the distinction is that we're actually presenting something on a drop-down list, and that's really what LOINC code systems are about. They are answer lists from questionnaires, and this really is a questionnaire orientated concept.
Yeah, but I think for FHIR-centric ecosystem, the value set is the drop-down list, right? The source code system is not so important.
Depends how much semantics you put into that, right? And that's my concern. Really is
above the coding system. Like, as you know, I'm looking at asked declined and treating that the data absent reason asked declined, and treating that as the same as refused to answer in LOINC. But maybe that's incorrect.
Okay,
it is correct.
From a code,
That's appropriate.
I'll put forward a hypothetical. What if we make this must support and mandatory at some point, and then we are forced to actually put in an absent reason? We now have a conflict or an ambiguity around the meaning of that absent reason.
I don't think you.
I don't think you do.
Because it's a different structure, right? That'll be a nested extension instance.
I agree.
No.
Which, no?
Well, depends.
Hang on. It depends. Yeah, it depends. I mean, if it's must support and you simply, if asked declined, asked unknown, and not asked aren't appropriate, then you'd use unknown.
Well, why don't we take the contention out of this and just go with the original 3 LOINC codes and move on? At least we get it into this.
No, I think
base.
we do need asked, declined, asked, and not asked, and unknown at a minimum. We can consider removing asked, unknown, but those other 3 are actually used in Queensland Health right now. So there is implementation,
but if it's extensible, I mean, what's our binding preference strength here? If it's a preferred, then
it's extensible.
It's extensible,
even in AU base.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, we want to put explicit guidance in, because it's not as though. I think
I mean,
these concepts are. We're saying we're recognizing these concepts.
What do you, when you say you're using it in Queensland Health from a user interface data capture perspective, or as a FHIR value?
data capture in our mental health enterprise solution.
Okay.
I also think it's going to be a bit conspicuous if we allow these things for gender identity, but not pronouns. In any case, if we put these things in, the AU base is going to ballot. We're not deciding what's going to get
Yeah,
published. So we
good
could
point.
get feedback.
Yeah, I think we'll need to get feedback, and we should run it through.
So what's the motion?
I think this should go in, and then if there is a proposal to either have special codes for every single time we say like asked and unknown or not declined, then those things should be raised. Or if we want to move across the board to use something different, we should. Again, that should be, I think, a JIRA, like a spec feedback that should come in and say, look, instead of using the data absent reason, we should move to using this different terminology. But I do think we should move to accept this proposal.
Okay.
I think we're arguing something bigger than just pronouns, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we are. I think we are.
It's the general case all
agreed.
the time, and,
Yeah.
and we're going to have this over and over. And I think because
I
of that, we
agree.
need to agree on a common set we're always going to use when you're in
Yep.
this position of a form and you're trying to ask a question. And,
Yeah,
and whether
I
it's these
agree,
four
absolutely.
or and then I really struggle with the difference between unknown and the field being optional. But that's just me. But I think we do need a common set. And then this is a conversation that's not about pronouns, it's about any other element we ever look at.
Is Liam
Yeah.
on the call still, or is he left? Just wondering what
Who?
Liam
Oh, Liam.
Barnes. It looks like he's gone.
I think, yeah, he left.
We want consistency.
All right.
Absolutely.
Consistency, I think, is
Yeah,
key.
consistency is the key here.
I don't
And
care
I
if it's
agree
low
with
ink or this,
Danielle's.
but we want consistency.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I mean, we're not going to use low ink in places where there's no low ink.
No.
Well, I think Danielle's almost
Yeah.
stated that,
Yeah.
rightly or wrongly, we've already gone down the road of using this in many places, and I think we're splitting hairs to then switch. We've kind of made the decision, and are we going to really retrospectively go back and change all that? Should we?
I think if we do, that's a separate proposal. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Right. So
Okay.
we're saying we want to make sure asked unknown is included in this set, I think.
I heard we were taking it out.
We
I
were
think we
taking
had
it out, and then
discussed-
it sounded like we were putting it back.
Yeah, because
I-
there's to distinguish.
I like it in, but I struggle with unknown. And I struggle with it being, if it's a mandatory element, then not asked to
No,
me
it's
is
not.
unknown.
It's not mandatory in AU base. If someone were to adopt it and make it mandatory, then having a mechanism to simply indicate that you have no idea what the value is
But then missing
is
data
slightly
starts to
different
play a role.
to an optional to leaving it out if it were optional.
So what are the values you got in Queensland Health? All four?
If you hang on a second, it'll take me a minute to find that.
Or maybe you'd have three, but only when you have to supply it to someone else would the fourth come into play. And it's exchange, but
Yeah, and I think that might be where I wonder if that's where Angus is hanging up, is like from a system perspective, it's always going to be one of the three child codes. The bucket code is never used.
That's right. And then the bucket code is only used when if someone says, if you're going to tell me anything, you have to tell me something about this element. And you go, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, as a receiver, that's a problem for me, right? If my storage layer, and again, I know we're not talking about storage, but if I can only store the three specializations and you send me the generic code, what do I do with it? I'll figure something
That's
out.
up to you.
That's
AU
up to you.
base is
Yeah.
simply
Yeah.
specifying what you can put in and what's appropriate and the structure.
You'll accept it and say, how does that map into my world?
Yeah.
My concern is the ambiguity between the two. I think if
Which
Angus
two?
is probably asked unknown and unknown. I think if you think
So-
about it as from a questionnaire perspective, asked unknown makes more sense than just plain unknown, and unknown
It
becomes
absolutely
Okay, but
more
does.
of
un-
a,
it-
a
it
true
does.
missing data scenario.
But these aren't
It
just
does.
questionnaires, like it
They
does
aren't
in a
just
questionnaire
questionnaires,
sense.
exactly.
Yeah, and asked unknown's a
The-
specialization of unknown, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Those three are all specializations of unknown.
Which
How's
is even
unknown
more
different
reason
to-
why it's hard to determine which one to use.
I feel like unknown
So-
is the equivalent of null in a database. It's just not there.
No. Okay, yeah, that might be true. But there's a very clear semantic for asked unknown. You've asked someone what their
agree.
pronouns are, and they
100%
say
agree with
they
asked
don't
unknown.
know. So that makes sense.
Agreed.
Unknown, like Danielle B said, is in situations where you don't know if it's been asked or not, and
It's not asked.
you have no
It's
idea
not
what
asked.
it is.
It's not asked.
No, it might have been
No,
asked. So
no,
think about the
might have been
illegible writing on a form. It's been asked. You
It's
can't
asked
make
unknown.
out what they've written.
It's asked
No,
unknown.
No, that's not asked unknown. Because
You asked,
the
and you don't know
writing
what
might
they've
have been
written.
illegible. Yeah, you don't, but they do. So
That
they
was their
know what it
response.
is.
Unknown was their response with asked unknown.
Yeah, they've said emphatically, I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas if they've written something in illegible handwriting, it's something. We know it's something. We know it's not unknown.
So
For
We
them.
don't. They know, and we don't.
We don't.
Yeah.
So that's that's fine if that is our definition of unknown,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
I feel like we're also defining unknown as no one answered the question, like we're treating unknown like null, and also like not null. We just didn't understand what it was. Like, which one is it?
Remember, there are other data absent codes that may capture all those variations, right? We're just saying they're not our preferred.
Yeah, we're saying these are the pre-coordinated set, which if the semantic matches, you must use. But yeah, because it's extensible, you can certainly put other things in there which don't align with these values.
And there's a fair chance that you might not have an answer to this question, but you don't know whether you're asked or not. Right, so you have to put unknown because you don't know whether they decline to answer or
unknown's ambiguous as unless someone writes a paragraph about what it means, it's ambiguous.
That's actually the point. No, that is actually the point. You're
yeah.
saying you don't know anything. You don't know if
I don't know if it's Ruben's scenario where they wrote something I couldn't read it, or whether you never even asked it and it's effectively null. I don't know the difference.
So keep in mind, all three of these are actually specializations of unknown.
They are.
Yeah,
that's right.
And the thing is, like you might have a system that has a slot for pronouns, and you don't know if you ever asked that question or not. It's just empty, right? So you don't know whether there's no actual answer. So it's it might that field might not have existed when that patient was registered, right? So you don't even, it couldn't be asked.
But that becomes a true absent reason.
Yeah, but I think in failing that, it's unknown, right?
Do we accept having
you
these?
just don't know. Yeah.
You might not use them, but in AU base is a structure to allow people to use them. Do we accept these for?
I am the chair, but I would suggest that that these are good to run with, and we should try them out and put them through the paces and see if there's something missing, or
I think someone needs to produce a paragraph of what unknown means. But to me, that's the only one that's unclear.
Well, the paragraph is in the spec. The value is expected to exist, but is not known.
Yeah.
Let's move on. As we've already indicated, we've got an opportunity to respond in ballot if anyone feels strongly about it.
Yeah, I think we should run it through Connectathon with some systems and see if there's a problem. Yeah, or just that like nobody's using this code because it's pointless.
Yeah,
we
but
can
if they
flag...
do use it, then because they don't actually have the three specializations, then we know what it means.
Yeah.
So
I
if the
also think-
AU core
yeah.
proposal gets up for Jeff for pronouns around this, we can look to include that in the connectathon and see who's interested to participate in that testing in the connectathon in March.
Yeah, because I think it'd be good
Hint for
with
people on the
systems-
line if you want to come, you know,
Yeah,
help
be
us solve if this works.
yeah, it'd be good for people with systems to say, I'm going to use these codes because that means something to me, right? And you know, that will actually know. That's good. All right. So I think we're back to the original proposal.
I will second it.
Thank you. I can't first it. So
I'll
I'll
motion
I'll-
it.
I
Great.
was assuming that Ruben was going to
Ruben. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm happy for Danielle to make the motion.
excellent. Danielle and Heath. Anyone against it? I hear nothing. See nothing. Anyone abstaining?
Yeah, and I will abstain, Brett.
Okay, Stephen. This one for Stephen abstaining. All right, we'll say that has carried. Good job. Yeah, we just
Thank
crossed
you.
null flavors with gender questions. So this is like absolutely the crossroads of meeting time. So we've done all right to pass.
Whoever made the decision to make this call 90 minutes, I thank you.
Thanks, Brett.
That's yeah, I know.
Can I ask that
Takes
we
the pressure.
hop on to the proposal, the project proposal? Are we going to talk about that today?
Oh, well, I hadn't planned on that, but
Okay.
we can. I might put that out as an email. I think. So yeah, I will just.
Do you want to
mention
talk
it.
about it? Shall we talk about
Yeah.
it now so that people know what it is for a new project proposal? Sorry, I didn't realize it hadn't gone to the FHIR working group. Oh, I got it, but I guess that's because I'm now a co-chair.
No, it's gone to chairs. Yeah, it's gone to
Oops.
chairs, not the group. So yeah. So So I think the co-chairs have this on their plate, but it's it's a project around some what are we doing? Synthetic data. So being able to have some test data and example data managed as a set that people can pick up and utilize for testing, but also you know, as a reference as well in terms of valid content. So the idea was to have a project there. We set that up as part of the HL7 Australia repository content, and being able to produce that, and we kind of call on people to contribute to that as well as part of the process. So there's definitely a need for that as part of the Sparked work. But I think we're looking to sort of build out sets of things that people can use as well to do their sort of testing and things as well. So that would be kind of helpful for everyone, hopefully, and make it easier for people. That's the brief thing. Was there anything else, Danielle? That's the main thing, really.
No, I think that's a really good summary. I'll say, putting my Sparked hat on, I guess, that we're going to need to support building out like AU core and AU e-requesting and going to connectathons and that kind of content, like some meaningful data that we can stick on reference servers. And what I wanted to do was actually have that be under control and hand that over to like HL7AU. So we'll put the effort behind building some synthetic data, but put that under the governance of HL7AU and make that really clearly visible how people can directly contribute in open source and use it for whatever else they want to use, and start building out this whole like FHIR synthetic data and test data set. So that was my idea. Instead of keeping it in-house in Sparked, we actually bring that out and move it under HL7 infrastructure.
Sounds good. Yeah, so I think that will definitely come to the work group. I think the co-chairs will have a chat about it, and then probably just finalize what goes to the work group. And then yeah, I suggest we'll probably just put that out via email and maybe set up an e-vote around it, because unless people want to refer it to a discussion, because I don't think there's anything too crazy there.
So is there going to be some review of the data that's produced? As you know, we're setting this up as
that's a good discussion.
working group project. Is what does it matter to the people in this call? How are they going to, I guess, participate in that process? Or
Yeah, I
They
think
can use it, provide feedback, raise issues, contribute to it, basically.
in theory,
And the
pull requests.
overall, I guess, process governance and who owns it comes under the FHIR Working Group and the board.
and that's really what we're saying here, is that ultimately it's this group that's responsible for that data. Spark will be accelerating
We'll be contributing,
that.
yeah.
And then it's going to fall back to this, and really it's the responsibility of this group to actually say, yes, that's a good set of data.
Yeah, and primarily initially it's really just we have to approve the existence of a repository as a formal thing, right? So we're going to hold it as HL7 Australia collateral, basically, which is good for the.
Well, that's an outcome of that, but
that's an outcome. Yeah.
The fact
No,
that
but yeah, it'll be going into an HL7 repository and not just so that's why it's relevant for our group, because it's like to actually have that repository exist. It's definitely work group related.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is, what are we voting on? We're voting on the fact that we're creating a Git repository, or are we voting on the fact that we're wanting to build a set of test data that everyone will agree on?
You're voting on the fact that someone has, or the FHIR Working Group will vote that a project has come to be kicked off, and that it meets, like, we've filled out all the project things, like it belongs in HL7, there's no overlapping things, it's got some funding and reasonable effort behind it, in that it's the appropriate kind of project, and that you see no, I guess, real technical or otherwise issues with this proceeding. And that, I guess, the FHIR Working Group agrees that it will take the governance sponsorship of this project, which we kind of have to do as long as the projects that are put up are reasonable and don't conflict with other ones.
Yeah,
and then I guess we'll have to check in, like the project will need to report back into the FHIR Working Group to say what they're doing and how they're going, and that it's okay. I mean, this is not a spec project, so there's no balloting or anything.
No, there's no balloting. There's so it's really a informative set of things that go along with the standards content. So the thing will be the maintenance, probably into the future as new versions come on and things like that. So we have to make sure the things are compliant, and a whole bunch of, which is more about the quality control of the material. But that requires obviously participation to do. So at the moment we're good for the Spark program because we've got some support for that. But we would have to consider that again in the future, probably, if there's no Spark.
So I'm just confused. Are you putting this proposal to vote now, or is this just okay?
I'm not going to do it. Yeah, so we'll finalize this with the co-chairs, and then we'll put it out.
Okay. I think it'd be useful to, if the expectation is that the accelerator is going to be the legwork for this, that somehow they should be identified as at least something.
Because we kind of went through to the first phase, which is like essentially the sparked period of work. So this is the actual scope of the project, and I believe it should be mentioned explicitly. It is a Spark FHIR Accelerator related activity.
Yeah, but even with Spark Accelerator as the scoping, I think the scoping is a bit too broad, and it raises the question of how long is this piece of string type of question. International experiences, as example data or sample data are generated per resource basis and also per use case basis. So when you go into the resources, there are already a set of basic example data or examples that are already there, and they are enriched as comments comes in with other examples. So one typical example is the procedure resource internationally. We recently went through a set of debates about procedure outcomes, and we have enriched it with a set of examples. So I'm not sure that this proposal actually is doable, in the sense that you are setting the scope so broadly that we don't even know where to begin, and that's my concern.
Yeah, I think yeah, because primarily the need was around the 2 Spark projects, and that's what the PSS is saying.
Well, so I don't necessarily see that as a problem. It's saying, can we work on this project? And in a project proposal, it always starts with a really broad idea, like all the OGs and all the tooling does. Here's a thing we want to end up doing.
Yeah,
I think it would be good if we had some sample data. And look, if the FHIR Working Group says, no, we don't actually support having a HL7AU project that lands with sample data that can be used in connectathon and testing that we can all contribute to, then that's where that lands.
So this is different, Stephen, to examples in IGs and stuff. This is significant amount of test data which will actually be utilized as part of conformance testing. So and can be used for other things like connectathons and stuff. So this is going to be a real ongoing library of data that people can leverage for their own testing purposes.
I could see Heath having a good synthetic data set for provider directories as well, to sort of help drive some of these connectathon.
Exactly. And I'd like to see that come in as well. Absolutely. Like I would like us to see HL7 Australia start building out this synthetic data. So as people try to implement, be it provider directory or AU core, there's a resource here that says you can pull down and load your data and test this as you're trying to build. That's, I think, the goal of the project.
Yeah, I think too, in that, like at the moment we're talking about these cases, but I think when we go, like if we're looking at smart launch and client activity and things like that, it's good to have some source material that you can, that won't have, it has useful things in it, like national identifiers and a whole bunch of things that are hard to manage in test data normally as well. So I think that's part of the scope of the discussions that are being had as well, in terms of being able to flesh them out with realistic looking data.
And the other thing is that we're trying to source data from organizations like yours, Paul, and Stephen, to actually put into this library effectively. And we need, like, from a governance perspective, coming back to what the project proposal is about, is to actually agree, yes, that HealthLink data that has been contributed or offered is actually something that should be part of the library, or no, that's got, there's probably some policies or something around it, like, oh no, that's got real IHIs in it, that's
some scrambling,
that can't be in there.
So I guess there is a question there on who's actually going to be doing the hard, like the heavy lifting, to take real world data sets and turn them into something that is actually fit for purpose for this.
Yeah. And I think there'll be some cycles spent on it as part of Spark, but I think from an ongoing sense, it's like how do we maintain it into the future is probably a good question. But I think
University of Queensland do some work on this too. They have been working on creating synthetic data sets. I think,
like Cynthia and all that.
I don't think they're doing that with FHIR though.
But if they could get the source data, we could do the transforms and the modeling.
And that's exactly what I'm working through, is exactly that, having a format to be able to collect data in whatever format and then get it into actual FHIR format. So
I think that's our next step in FHIR maturity, is making this kind of thing available and getting away for people to contribute.
And hopefully it's a good, because obviously this as a resource is like it's saving cycles for people, giving people that data, and saving cycles people trying to seek out this data, because I think there's a lot of time spent
We
building
do
these
spend a
things
lot of
up.
time talking
Yeah.
about getting
Yeah.
the data set set up before we can
Examples.
do any interop testing. So
Yeah, so I think having something that's there that's pretty useful is going to be good, and the better it is, obviously, the more important it'll be. So hopefully people will work on it. Thanks, Ruben.
Yeah, sorry, I've got to go. I just wanted to let everyone know that next week we've got an out of session FHIR Work Group meeting to discuss the adoption of the gender harmony recorded sex or gender proposal, which I've put a link into the chat for. I strongly recommend, if you're participating in that discussion, to read the proposal and put your questions or concerns as comments. It is perhaps one of the most complex of the gender harmony data elements and prone to, I guess, confusion. So, and obviously reach out to me offline if you like or need clarity on anything. It's bound to be a lively discussion. Thanks, Brett.
So is there anything that can be done around that value set or that code system?
Yeah,
Ruben?
I'm looking at that
Cool.
this next couple of days. Thanks for raising that concern. Yeah, I'm looking into it.
Yeah,
all right, got to go, everyone.
Appreciate you taking us through.
thanks all.
Sure. Cheers.
Yeah, and thanks everyone. We're at time. We ran a meeting. We got some stuff done, so this is a good result. So yeah, we'll catch up. So our out of session next week on Wednesday. We'll send a reminder out before early next week, probably about that session too. So, but it's on the same link as this one, so it's on the regular link. Cool.
And Brett, thank you for stepping up. I
No worries.
apologize for the inconvenience.
No drama at all. No worries. Thanks all.
Thanks.
Catch you soon.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.